We get a sense of belonging when we attend church. There's a sense of security and comfort in belonging. Sometimes we wish others would come into our circle. And if someone upsets our beliefs or the way we do things in church, we'd probably prefer they didn't come. We're clear about who we are, what we stand for, and we know who's on our side and who isn't. But this way of thinking runs into problems when we think about Jesus' command to love others outside of our circle, particularly if they are not a lot like us. In a society made up of groups like ours, each one defending their own boundaries, it's not hard to see how identities can become stereotyped, and prejudice gives rise to slanging matches which may easily descend into violence. So, how can we all get on together, but still remain true to our faith? Another way of thinking might be to think of ourselves as facing a centre. We seek to be inspired by the values and ethics of the one we look to, Jesus Christ. We may be far from the centre or close, but what matters is where we face, as we seek to live our lives in the spirit of the one who is at the centre. Not so much to be Christian as to be Christ-like. Judas Iscariot was close to the centre, but he turned away to some other centre. In the story of the prodigal son, the young man turns his back on his father to go his own way, but later he comes to his senses and decides to return home. He discovers that he was always loved and always accepted. So it is with us. Of course, there are many who don't know or recognize Jesus or have chosen another path in life. One person who has done a lot of thinking about these things is a Croatian theologian who has studied ethnic cleansing in his homeland, a cycle of revenge, creating the misery of war between the different groups in the former Yugoslavia. Recently he was interviewed in the context of the political slagging match underway in the lead-up to the US presidential elections.
What I found interesting in 1 Peter is how it cuts across this, how it completely muddles these distinctions, and I think it muddles them from the central commitment to Jesus Christ. And so it's not that I orient myself over against the social groups by drawing boundaries, but rather I am oriented around the center, and boundaries fall as they will.
Wolf points out how the Apostle Peter in his writings focused the attention of the early church on the center of their faith, rather than be distracted by the behavior of others who were attacking and abusing them. The early Christians were being treated by others as them, even though the early church fathers tried to explain that they were not a threat, they weren't terrorists, and they wanted to live peacefully in society.
A little bit later, like Tertullian and Justin Martyr, they would write tracts demanding of non-Christians to respect them, right? Kind of persecuted, and then kind of the sense of why you're doing this to us. Why don't we have the same rights as other religious groups? Any religious group with respect to other, I think it was Justin Martyr or Tertullian says, is profane to the other, right? Because they don't worship the same God, therefore they're kind of profane, they're secular. That's why Christians were deemed to be atheists.
The early Christians were not understood. Easy lion fodder. They believed the man, Jesus, was God. They were suffering the effects of the club mentality, a setup for misunderstanding, suspicion, prejudice, and antagonism. So, what's the answer?
In the context of a regime of toleration, then you think, well, it doesn't make sense, right? In the regime of toleration, we're not tolerated, so why are we the ones who should think about tolerating and honoring, right? But if you think of the mindset of toleration, or mindset of respect, right? then things become very different, because the mindset of disrespect can be very much the characteristic of those who are in the center and those who are on the margins. Indeed, the mindset of intolerance can grow precisely among those who are on the margins, as they keep the center at bay in order to protect themselves. And I found it very interesting that you have this then command: honor everyone, your persecutors too, and honor them irrespective of what they do. And again, that's a kind of sense of definition of the self from the center, rather vis-a-vis the behavior of the others outside, and this universality of it. Honor everyone.
History is littered with examples of the power play of dominant groups who protect their interests by diminishing others. Colonialism, for example. And it can happen easily between religions with boundary-set mentalities. If a minority try to defend themselves, they face the big guns of the dominant majority. Everything is stacked against them. So many choose to become invisible in society. The answer, according to the early church fathers, when they were the minority, was to respect and honour everyone regardless, getting on with being Christ-like to all.
I don't have to shore up the difference in order to be distinct. I can hold on to the center, and it guarantees and sufficiently my distinct. Now, I think injunction to honor everyone is really revolutionary and extraordinarily significant. I think it bears. It also contains a promise of possibility of living with others in a way that doesn't betray my own identity, the sturdiness of my own identity, and yet doesn't always parasitically strengthen that identity by pushing the other away, by denigrating the other, by not being able to see the good in other as a person or multiplicity of gifts that this other person might have.